Frieren follows humans, little guys, drunks, male models, but a whole lot of focus is on the elves, who are all kind of ridiculous. Why is she like this? Or this petty one, this whole thing, this behavior? What drives immortals of immense power to spend their time doing this? Elves in Frieren are really interesting, everlasting, small, cute, going extinct. They're a really well thought out part of the world. These two's outlook on magic, the future, it's all inherent to the very nature of an elf's existence in Frieren. It's why they're like this, it's genius, and it's got a lot to do with a white flower. But first, hedgehogs. Frieren asks, what does it mean to live forever? It's painful, would be the simplest answer. It's the hedgehog's dilemma cranked up to 90. To someone, the greater the potential to get hurt, like hedgehogs huddling for warmth and stabbing each other. So how does this apply to elves? Over a dramatically long scale, it's what's going on. Opening yourself up to someone runs the risk of getting hurt when they leave, which is so much worse if you live so much longer. And inevitable for an elf, it makes it understandable why a long-lived creature is naturally predisposed to be antisocial. Elves are the pandas of Frieren's world. They just aren't cut out for natural selection anymore. This is a species who have had their numbers decimated deliberately, but biologically they have little desire to rebuild them, generally in avoidance of getting hurt, and they might die out because of it. Frieren's journey is a personal one, but the little world-building bits we get about elves lets us know that they're slowly kind of facing a crisis, dying out. It makes Frieren's personal development much bigger. These two elves have different ideas about the future of magic, but also the outcome for elves, to be remembered, feared, in awe, or to be thought of fondly and missed. A connection with a non-elf must be a horrible prospect. Best case scenario, you get something short term, and then you have forever with the loss of them. We see this through the weird time scale of flashbacks, and it's informed the philosophy of elves. The big difference between these two, how they approach magic, how they've shaped the world, they're both rooted in this. We get two approaches to solving the hedgehog's dilemma. One is to try and force your way into the afterlife after you've lost someone, just brute force to see them again. The other is to withdraw from those spikes, to pretend you don't desire any connection or warmth. And frankly, it's all tied up in this old lady. Frieren, Serie, Flamme. Two are elves. One is a big fleshy human who will age to death pretty quickly from the other's perspective. And there's a shared point of connection for both of them. She's the most interesting example to compare them. The differences in reaction are indicative of how they approach connection magic, life as a whole, self-expression through magic. We first meet Flamme through Frieren. It's the legendary mage that taught her the skills she would devote a lot of her near infinite life to. She sentimentally collects old grimoires from that period. But what about this grumpy elf? She claims to have taken the apprentice on a whim, but they never understood each other, or any of the future students she takes. But she fields her final test in a room of flowers she made with magic, because there's a big difference between what she says and, reality. Serie did end up setting up that magic association that was Flamme's last wish. While it doesn't quite take the same form, she has followed up on what the humans she raised wanted. Both elves ended up living out Flamme's wishes for them, but they've had starkly different approaches to that. Frieren and Flamme's story is told through short glimpses of flashback during the aura fight. It's enough to get quite a lot across, even if a serious amount of time in most of Flamme's life is just this one transition. It begins with the two walking through trees, which is symbolically neat considering the last Flamme appearance dealt with a sapling too. Frieren is fairly dismissive of her feelings at first, but after an encounter with demons and a talk about what they mean to each of them, Frieren becomes her apprentice and learns to make a mockery of magic. Flamme tells her pretty much how the next 1,000 years are all laid out for her. She'll spend her life deceiving demons. But the detail in this analogy is very interesting for Frieren and Serie in the future. Demons are cunning. Why don't they suppress their mana? Flamme starts to talk about organization, that demons lack deeper social bonds. Demons show their importance through their strength, humans through their status. I think it's interesting that Flamme views organization as a vital analogy for explaining how mages are going to deal with demons, considering what her post-death requests were. Is the greater human and elf capacity to form social bonds that continues the Continental Magic Association and the studying of Zoltrak. She's using it as an analogy in an apt way. At this point in the story, we only really need this conversation to set up the mana suppression stuff, but it links forward, anchors Serie in the earlier development. Symbolically, there's a clear line. Just like having those white flowers, those flamme stand-ins around in so many important scenes for the differences between Serie and Frieren. Flamme is the flower, and the response to losing a human has been a wedge between the two of them. This little magic flower pushing them on two separate paths of development. Plus, if we're talking symbolism, Frieren is literally holding an apple as she's having this demon stuff explained to her. Fruit of knowledge is not the most subtle detail. Before that though, the fleshy human dies, and Frieren follows her instructions to the letter. Frieren did withdraw from the world for quite a while at one point. After suffering a major setback, she decides to go and hide, to retreat away from the possibility of pain, just like the other elf does. After losing a community to demons, a master to time, and confidence to another demon, you'd forgive an elf for retreating. But Frieren is eventually broken out of retirement by a human having faith, which was in turn inspired by using magic for connection, using Flamme's favourite spell. No matter how much you try to insulate yourself, if you're willing to make someone smile, someone could do the same back. By trying to uphold what she was taught by Flamme, Frieren opened up, and it's Flamme's last wishes that push another elf to form bonds too. The first piece of Flamme's significance for our overall story is when Frieren is searching out some notes from the old legendary Mage, and is amused that she's still leading her after all this time. We do learn in a flashback though that Flamme believed there'd come a time when she realized she should have gotten to know people better and prepared for that. So 1,000 years later, she follows her old master's instructions exactly, down to killing the Demon King, ushering in a new era of peace, and then finding the value in actually getting to know people. Just like how this elf's weird reaction to Flamme's last wishes were predicted by the Mage, and yet she still ended up following them. But it's a parallel between them both that's supposed to draw into greater focus their differences. The foreknowledge from Flamme sets the plot in motion. Eisen says the 10 years changed Frieren a lot more than the time before, but it's thanks to those years that Frieren is chasing out connection, despite the potential to get pricked. It's the same impulse that drives someone to collect the useless magic that makes people smile, while Frieren's desire to understand others is now a driver in her collection of magic. Another elf doesn't have the same motivation. Serie elevates herself above the rest of the mages and pretty much everyone, but she's also a walking contradiction. It must suck to be at the peak of magic all by yourself. She might call her apprentices disappointments, but remembers each of their favourite spells. Compared to Frieren, this is a pretty direct denial way to handle the Hedgehog's dilemma, to take that potential for pain and use it to harden yourself. Serie is robbed of the greater connection. If her approach to her students is anything to go by, she doesn't want to let anyone else in, close enough that she could get pricked. It causes a lot of this defensiveness, leading to viewing the world through the lens of combat, that nobody can reach her level. Her philosophy to it all, though, is so much different between what she says and what she actually means. Nothing is a clearer sign of that than in how she's communicating through flowers. We get the first of a few visits to these kind of hillsides in this scene, where Flamme is old now, and Frieren still loves magic. Less so, it seems, but she does. It's 50 years later, and the now old master wants Frieren to plant flowers around her grave. Her favourite spell makes flowers. Her parents taught it to her when she was young, which made her love magic. Another kickback to the pain of losing everyone close to you young, which can cause people to try and withdraw from fear of getting hurt again. Frieren wants to learn the spell. It goes on to be her favourite spell too. We get a lot of flower shots in the final test as well, which is where we see the clearest that there is affection in Serie's relationships. She just can't express herself. Her weirdness of other people kind of extends to goading someone into attacking Frieren in a duel to the death. Since this guy is so starved of praise, it doesn't even take much. But he's consoled by being told that Serie will remember him. She's just too awkward to express anything, too hidden away, but clearly is capable of affection for these apprentices, just doesn't want to admit it. Frieren specifically uses the flower spell to make people happy. Serie uses it to quietly demonstrate that despite acting like she's above it all, doesn't care. She probably wanted Frieren to notice her flowers too. When we flash back to the test at the end of the season, Frieren actually calls out some of her hypocrisy. They're sat in a room of Flame's favourite spell, specifically of plenty of white Flame-coded flowers in the symbolic flower language the show uses so often. Serie claims she was a failure like most of her apprentices, but strangely she remembers their favourite spells, their personality through that. Frieren calls her a child for being unable to tell them how she feels, but maybe for someone so unable to reach out, having the flowers out there is the most they can do to express this. Magic is a form of expression. It's kind of important with the elves, and I'd like to talk about it for a minute. Their favourite spell being something symbolic for people. Frieren collects folk magic, not the stuff that might be used for war, but it is fantastic for making people happy, for planting flowers near a grave. Magic is self-expression, as identity or belief. For Flame and Frieren who love magic, their favourite spell is flowers. For both, it represents a connection to someone else, parents, master and student, Himmel, but it's magic to express yourself through a link. And then we have Serie the Living Grimoire. If that title isn't magic as self-expression, then I don't know what is. In the same sequence as all this Flame flashbacks, we're facing Aura, the executioner, who loves those damn scales, whose favourite spell is basically her defining feature. Like Flame says, demons define themselves by their magic. Mages might do that too. Not every elf that we see is a mage, but the two most important so far have been, and their approaches to magic are kind of key to this whole thing. Frieren has adopted a view of magic where the journey is better than the destination. Magic is great for making people happy, or doing this kind of stuff, but the nonsense is just as important. Serie prefers magic to be powerful, or wants to say so. She deliberately insulates herself. It stands to reason that this would inform her view of magic. She knows and remembers all those old spells, knows so much about old magic that she's a living grimoire, yet acts so above all that stuff. It's petty, and an understandable response to the pain of living so long. Longer than Frieren. Maybe Serie's colder outer appearance is what happens when you live so long you only really have the choice to try and turn inward. Or maybe it's because she hasn't had the help that Frieren has. Frieren, on the other hand, embraces magic for the sake of magic. She might not be great at forming connections with people, but when she does, she's open enough to let them in. Her journey with the Heroes Party has changed her, and also her approach to magic. The Frieren Serie Flame meeting comes not too far into these two travelling together, but almost instantly they disagree about their approaches. Serie offers Frieren any spell, and she says no. Lol. The joy is in seeking it. Frieren is the folk magic loving mage for a peaceful era. The favourite spell thing is an expression of someone's identity. Well, with her, she's the living grimoire. She has all this knowledge of nonsense folk magic, but cultivates mages who put the most emphasis on strength. But collecting spells and memories of apprentices along with their little details along the way, she's so closed off, she's incapable of enjoying them. Flame's little speech about how different creatures show status, and then we see Serie sat in her pile of books, claiming to know nearly every spell ever created. Isn't that the same thing? Is this the elf equivalent of mana for demons, or title and status for humans? And maybe it's at least the Frieren equivalent of it. Serie is collecting these apprentices, this magical knowledge. Frieren is collecting magic too, but the biggest difference between them is that her collection isn't just the books. It's the memories too, and ones that she can process, not just be aware of and unable to express. They're both amassing magic for self-expression, but while Serie can understand the magic, she isn't willing to risk the hurt from admitting that she cares about the people behind it too. Hey, thanks for watching. I've been Comfy Lilin. There's a sub button around here somewhere if you like. Alright, cheers.